Shalom, good afternoon from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State, 1981, celebrating our 43rd year now. Today is Wednesday, November 13th, 2024, in the Gregorian calendar, and it is the 12th day of the 8th Israelite Hebrew month of Cheshvan in the Hebrew Israelite calendar, New Israelite Hebrew year 5785. Welcome to episode 133 of our weekly Root and Branch Association Torah Fellowship seminars. The chairman of the fellowship and the lecturer for speaker for the weekly seminar is Rabbi Hanania Weitzman of Jerusalem, Israel, and we're so privileged to have as our distinguished program chairman, Advocates Lawrence Gordon of Kobe, Japan. Please support our work. You'll see the links below for Rabbi Weitzman and for myself to help me continue building our Hebrew Bible-based broadcasting network from Jerusalem, Israel, to honor the Godland Torah and people of Israel, and all humanity. And I want to thank the 12 founding supporters who have done just that. And we welcome our live studio audience from France, the United States, Japan already mentioned, and the land of Israel. And now, without further ado, let me hand over the mic to Rabbi Weitzman. Hanania, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lowell. Welcome, everybody. I have some very good stuff for you today. It's going to be a two-part class. First part, we're going to talk about a very powerful source about vaccines and really much of modern medicine. And then the second part of the class, we should have time for both. We'll be talking about friends, friendship. Many of us, our circle of friends has changed over the last few years, to put it mildly. So we'll talk about friendship as well. But let's jump right into this. The first source comes from Sefer HaBris. I mentioned this a few weeks ago that I had recently started learning the Sefer for the first time. It was published in the 1800s by a Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu of Vilna in the 1800s, and it was a very well-known and much-learned sefer at the time. In recent years, for reasons that are not known to me, it's become somewhat forgotten. It seems to have fallen through the cracks, and many Talmidei Chachamim have never even heard of it. I hadn't heard of it. I discovered it by accident. I was learning the Pele Yoetz again, and he quoted the Sefer HaBris in several places in reference to Musar, and I really liked the things that he quoted, so I wanted to look up the sefer. I found it in a local base medrash on a top shelf in a corner where nobody really accesses it. I started learning it actually on Yom Kippur in the afternoon during the break, and I was blown away. I said, I've got to buy this. And I had to go to 5 different Sfarim stores until I found a copy. Okay, literally had to go to 5 different stores until I finally found a copy. Here it is right here, and it's a mind-blowing sefer. He talks about the nature of the world, science, health, Jewish philosophy, many, many different topics. It's very brilliant. Some of it I don't understand. He talks about the shape of the earth. That part I don't quite understand, although I'm told that he did not believe the earth was flat, but I don't fully understand what he was writing there. In any case, he has a very interesting section on health. He talks about how the body works, how health works, and what was modern science at the time. And then he usually doesn't write very long about any particular illness, but there was one that he spent several pages writing about. I'm not going to read the whole thing because the actual science is not really so relevant, as you'll see, but the philosophy behind the ruling in Jewish law. He's talking specifically about smallpox. And he starts off, this is on page, I don't know if there's different editions of the Sefer. He starts off talking about it on page 247. And he starts writing about smallpox. And first he explains what it is. He has a different word for it, was maslin, which maybe means measles, maybe a form of measles as well. But anyway, he's writing about smallpox, and he first explains how this was a devastating plague that was killing and ravaging many, many people. There was no known cure for it. It was something that was brand new in the world. It was sweeping through many areas and killing as many as half of a local population at certain times. There was no known cure for it, and those who didn't die were nevertheless very badly harmed for the rest of their lives, and they were very weak and sickly. Okay, and later on, he talks about the cure. He believes that they'd found a cure for it. He goes through the history of that. He mentions England and Jenner. That's Edward Jenner. He mentions how this whole thing works. But I want to read in particular 3 paragraphs because that is what's most relevant. And I have to preface this by saying that when a rabbi gives a ruling on something like this, science and health, okay, the ruling is predicated on the information that is made available to the rabbi. Meaning, if you go to a rabbi with a question about health and you give him certain data, certain numbers, certain data, certain symptoms, and you ask him, should we give this person a treatment? What risks should we take? Are we weighing the risks and the benefits? And the rabbi may give you an answer, okay? But the answer is predicated on the information that you gave him, meaning if some of those facts turn out to be not correct, or some of the variables are different in a different case, the question has to be asked all over again, and you have to go through it again as if from scratch. Because if you change any of the variables, the answer may come out different. It's very, very important. So people say, oh, great rabbi said that you must take the smallpox vaccine. You have to understand their rulings were based on information that was given to them at the time as to what the nature of smallpox was, the available treatments for it, a possible cure, the risks and the benefits, etc. And if any of that information was incorrect or any of the variables changed, then the answer they gave is not relevant to the present times anymore. We're working based on the principles, not based on a question that was asked a couple of 100 years ago, because it might not be relevant anymore. So we're trying to extract the underlying principles behind the answer that the rabbis gave, the ruling that the rabbis gave, and therefore we're not going to get bogged down in the facts or what they believe to be the facts about smallpox and the cure. Whether they were true or not makes no difference to me. I'll leave that to the doctors and the scientists and the people that care about the subject more deeply to go into it. I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to talk about the ruling and what the ruling itself was based on. So he goes on over here after first outlining for us what smallpox is and how devastating it is. He says as follows: Da, you should know, Tikvar Matza Yadam Shalarofim, Laspos is at Takbula, the Erech Meyashana, that the doctors have already found a cure or a strategy for treating this illness approximately 100 years ago. Vuhu shalakhu mitz hanikra metaria, and that is that they take a certain liquid that's called matter or material. Minho ababuos hanikra pakan, that's the word he uses for pox. Pakan is pox, smallpox, from the spots on the body that are called pox. Hativim, the natural smallpox that come from a child. Shahayalo ababuos tobim, that he had good spots. He had healthy spots on his body. Apparently, there were different types of spots a person can have. Some of them were normal and healthy, maybe pimples, and some of them were unhealthy smallpox. So they would take something from the skin of a child who had a healthy, natural version of this, upascho or basar zroa yad yamino o smalo, and then they would open up the skin of the flesh of the right hand, of the arm, on the right side or the left side, kimin charet stock, they would make a very small incision, v'katan ma'od, very thin and small, v'nasnu b'sacha charetz ma'at may also matariya hatov, and then they would put in that little crevice that they made in the skin a very small amount of this good matter. It was something that was very healthy to then inject under the skin of this person, not driving a needle deep into the bloodstream, but just making a small incision at the very top layer of the skin and then putting this inside. And then they would grow in the skin of the flesh of the second child would also grow this good pox, the good healthy pox. Because what you plant in the ground, that's what grows. You're planting something good, so something good will grow from it. And right, what you plant in the garden will grow. What you plant, the seeds you plant in the garden will grow. Just a figure of speech. Al harov most of the time, what you plant, if it's good, if the seeds are good, then the produce will be good, and if it's bad, it'll be bad. So here as well, yitzmach alarov pakin tovim. So here too, most of the time, the result of this would be that the second child would get good pox, not the bad pox, but the good pox. V'chein nagu harofim latas hapakin hativim hanikra bulitain inoculatzan ubelashon acher pakin in Zatzan. He uses the contemporary words. I don't know if these are German words, but he says that this was the practice of the doctors to plant these natural poxes that are called Bleitine. I don't know what it is, but the second word I do, in inoculation, they would inoculate the second child with something that they believed was healthy coming from the first child. FS, however, this is the treatment that they had 100 years earlier before Jenner came along. They were doing this other thing. He said, however, this didn't always help. Because sometimes, in spite of this treatment being good most of the time, the second child would get bad spots. Okay, you would plant something presumably healthy in the second child, but it would have a bad outcome. And sometimes some children would even die from this. You would take a healthy child, they would inject something underneath the skin that was healthy most of the time, but sometimes it would harm the child and possibly even kill him. Even though for most children, this would be beneficial. So most of the time, it seems the vast majority of the time, the second child would be benefited from this treatment. However, a small percentage of the time, a child would actually die from it. Lachain, key words here, listen carefully. Lachain hirchiku chachmei Yisrael adavar zeh. Therefore, the sages of Israel distanced this matter. They said, do not take this treatment. Do not take your healthy child and give him this inoculation treatment. They did not want to permit this for the people of our nation in order to not enter their children into a possible case of endangering their lives. You're taking a healthy child. He does not require any medical treatment at the moment. He's not sick. You are now giving a medical treatment to him, which 99% of the time, if not more, will actually improve his health and well-being. However, a small percentage of the time, you will actually be taking a healthy child and killing him with this treatment. Therefore, the sages of Israel said, you are forbidden to do it. You are not allowed to endanger or risk endangering the life of a child, of a healthy person, for the speculative benefit, however likely you think it is, that you will benefit him. You have no right to endanger the child's life. Boom! What does that say about all the shots and vaccines we have today? Pretty much everybody agrees. I mean, maybe there's some holdouts, but pretty much everybody agrees that at least a small percentage of the time, you will take a healthy person and turn him into a very sick person and possibly even a dead person. So according to this principle that we have over here, again, the facts of whether this treatment was good or bad or what the percentages were, whether his medical facts that he had available to him were true or not, is not really relevant. The principle is what's relevant. And he says very clearly, the sages of Israel ruled that if the treatment can potentially harm a healthy person, you're not allowed to give it. If a person is sick, then there's more room to take risks. Because if you don't do anything, he might die anyway. So therefore, there's a risk in not doing anything. But you have no right to take a healthy person and actively perform a medical treatment on him that may kill him, even if a vast majority of the time it will benefit him. He goes on and says, however, now in our generation, until now he was talking about the treatment that they had for the past 100 years, there has become a new, that we have found with God's kindness, interesting, same language that we hear today in reference to the COVID and other shots, and he really believed in this. We had an innovation with God's kindness, a brand new medical treatment. That will protect and shield the person from the smallpox illness, all the days of his life. Venitra cowpoxin. It's called cowpox. This is what Jenner found. They already tested, this was already tested on tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, myriads of people. The kulam yatsu b'shalom, all of them exited this treatment in peace, every single one. Now again, if this is factually true or not is not relevant. This is the principle that he's working with. This is the information that was given to him, that everybody who had Jenner's cowpox treatment emerged from it safe and sound. The language is not clear enough for you if you want to speculate. Maybe he doesn't mean literally everybody. Here he says literally everybody. Not one person died. They tested it on myriads and myriads of people, and not one of them died from this treatment. Vihi kiros chachmi Yisrael, when the sages of Israel saw that this matter was examined and tested very much. And every day, this medical practice is spreading and being accepted in every country to the ends of the earth and even distant islands. And we didn't hear about or see any damage or harm to any person, adult or child. They saw that this is something that never harms a person. Exactly 0% of the time, Amdu Gam Zikne Yisrael, only then did the elders of Israel get up, and those who hold on to the Torah in this generation, and then they permitted this treatment for all of Israel according to the Torah, the Gam Livnaim, and also to their children and their grandchildren. Then they order they instructed doctors to do this, to give this treatment to the children. Some of the rabbis even announced this in public and encourage people to take the treatment. And they say to them, that it is a great obligation on every man to do this for his sons and daughters when they are small, before they naturally can contract smallpox on their own, which could be very dangerous. So when they saw that this preemptive measure literally harmed 0 people, that it is spread all over the world, okay, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people had taken this treatment, and they didn't see or hear about even one person being harmed, only then did the rabbis get up and say that you have an obligation to do this as a preemptive measure. Yan kichol adam shekvar hayalo kaupakin magit meganu matzuloso shevalo od pakin ativim adalam. Being that everybody who had this cowpox injection was then shielded and protected, that he would never get the natural smallpox forever. So you see that the principle that the rabbis of the time were working with when they allowed the smallpox vaccine, again, whether the information they had was scientifically, factually correct or not, is less relevant than the principle. The principle here is that only when they saw, when they fully trusted that not one single person had been harmed by this, only then did they allow it. Okay, so nobody can say, oh, the rabbis allowed smallpox vaccines, so they're in favor of all vaccines, and it doesn't matter if some people get harmed along the way. It's for the greater good. It's for public health. If it saves more people than it harms, it's worth it. We can calculate these sorts of things. Absolutely not. This is the principle that the rabbis of the time around the world were working with. If it harms even one person, you are not allowed to give it to a healthy person, period. End of story. Okay, then he goes on and talks about the vaccine itself and how it works. But again, I'll leave that for the scientists, the people who have a greater interest in medicine, to look at it and see whether the facts here were right or wrong. But again, it's the principle that matters. And therefore, since the facts that we're working with today are very different, it's very clear that these shots do harm and even kill healthy people. Based on this principle, they should be forbidden. This is a checkmate source. Now, it gets even worse. It gets even worse, because if I know this source, I guarantee you other people know this source as well. And if any rabbi in the world wants to argue and say, okay, you saw something in a sefer, maybe a gadol believed in this, maybe a lot of great rabbis believed in this, but I have evidence to the contrary, that the Torah would mandate that, let's say, 3% of people would be killed from the shots, but 97% would be saved, and therefore that would be acceptable. The burden of proof is on that rabbi, first of all, but second of all, he must contend with this source. He must say, I am aware of this source. Okay, this is a very valid Torah source. It's very interesting. However, I am ruling differently because of all these other sources that I have that I believe are stronger than this source. That may be acceptable, but the fact is that not one of the rabbis, to the best of my knowledge, and I saw a lot of material during the COVID era, not one rabbi who urged people or mandated people to take these shots even acknowledged that this source exists, that this historical precedent where the rabbis examined after an injection was given to millions of people, potentially, it talks about myriads, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people were taking these injections, and they needed to certify that not one of them, they didn't hear or see that one person was even harmed. Only then did they authorize the shots. They don't even bring this up. If they're honest people, they need to give you all of the information from the Torah, not just quote you a pasuk that's important to save people's lives, which is a very nice concept, but that's all it is. It's a concept. It's not a legal principle. It's just a concept. Yes, we try to save lives, but in law, you have to outline these things, right? You have to define these things and have boundaries and nuance. They didn't do any of that. The fact that they didn't even bring this source up, okay, or any similar source, shows that they are not honest people and they can't be trusted. Okay, very important. Please share this with people, because the more people you wake up, that's how things change. I don't want to talk to just an echo chamber. I want Dafka to the people who hear this to share it with other people, and let these other rabbis, if they have evidence on their side, let them be forced to contend with this source and present stronger evidence. I strongly suspect that they will not be willing to do so if they're even able to do so, which also is very, very telling. Okay, second part of the class is about friendship. And this starts with a pasuk in Mishli. Okay, because many of us, as I've said in the beginning, our circle of friends has changed over the last few years. Most likely it's gotten smaller. Some people that we may have been friends with for a very, very long time are not friends with us anymore. And many people live in fear that they may lose their friends if they say something like friendship is a very, very big deal. Saida Halakha, the principle of harm. I would like to be able to look at the source. Okay, so I don't know if it's available online. I see a question from Lawrence about the source. What I can do is I can try to scan the relevant pages and email it, or I'll post it so those can see it for people can see it for themselves. Because the sefer seems to be a little bit hard to find, unfortunately, but it used to be a very, very well learned sefer. Okay, let's get to the friendship stuff. This is start from Mishli. Pasuk at the last pasuk in Parak Yud Ches, chapter 18 in Mishli. That's pasuk Chaf Daled, verse 24. Ish re'im lehisro eya. You have a man of friends, a man who acquires many friends so he can keep their company. He gets friends so he can have friends, basically. The yesh oev davek me'of, and there is somebody who loves you who is more attached to you than a brother. Okay, so here we have three different terms here. You have re'im, which is friends. Oev is a lover, somebody who loves you, which seems to be an even higher level than just a regular friend. And then you have Davek Me'ach, somebody attached to you than a brother. Brother is somebody that's very close to you, a blood relative, but you can have a friend who loves you, who's even closer to you than that. So I want to see two commentaries on this. Okay, we'll see the Ralbag and then the Malbim. The Ralbag writes as follows. You can find at certain times somebody who loves you, who's not your relative, will be even closer to you in a time of need than a brother, right? Sometimes a person needs something in life, he's in trouble, and his brother might not be able to help him or willing to help him, but somebody outside his family who loves him very much will be there. Therefore, it is appropriate for a person to acquire for himself, if he can, many people who love him. Be friendly, be sociable, be a good friend and good neighbor yourself, and the people will hopefully reciprocate. However, you shouldn't have too many re'im, which is just regular friends who don't necessarily love you. There are friends who are people that are just in the circle of your life, people who are in your place of work, in your school, in your neighborhoods, in your shul. So you're friends with them just because you happen to be occupying the same space, and you may actually like each other, but they're not necessarily going to be your friends in a time of need. They don't necessarily love you. They're just acquaintances, people who come and go. I view it as like planets that sort of drift in and out of each other's orbits. Or people that are part of your life for a certain amount of time. Your orbits are closer to each other, and then you gradually drift away. Someone moves, right? People's circumstances in life change, and then friends drift away. There's no malice, there's no hatred involved, but people sometimes are closer and sometimes they drift away, and that's a natural part of our journey in this world. So that's just Rayin. But an Ohev, somebody who loves you, is somebody who's permanently wants to be part of your life. Somebody who really loves you as a person and always wants to be there, even if physically they're distant from you, they're still spiritually a very major part of your life. Because you can find among those who love you, if you're fortunate to have such people, those who love you with the very essence of love, even though they're not necessarily a friend. Not everybody who loves you is also a friend. Think of a parent for a child, think of a Rebbe for a student, or a student for a Rebbe. They might have great love for each other, but they're not friends. Friends are equals, right, on a social level. Or it could be somebody that you don't necessarily have the opportunity to have a lot to do with, but you just love that person because you think that they're such a tzaddik, they're so righteous, they're so holy, they're so good. You just love that person, even though you're not really actively part of each other's lives very much. Okay, Vaharbos Berayim, says the Ralbag, one who has too many friends. Rayim are just regular acquaintances or friends on Facebook, social media friends. They're not really friends, but we often tend to think of them as friends. Having too many friends can cause you to lose friendship. It can harm the relationships. And the social group, some of them will turn against others. If your social group is too big and the people don't genuinely love each other, but they're there for convenience, they're there because they share an opinion about a particular matter, be it COVID or politics or some other such thing, some issue. So they are united around a particular issue, but they don't actually love each other as people. When those social circles get too large, the people are going to turn against each other. They'll find something that they don't like about each other. The ego will get in the way. Some other issue will come up and suddenly you will make a rift. We've seen this happen so many times over the last few years where these groups have infighting and breaking up because they're not really in love with each other as people. They're united around an issue. And when those circles get too big and they're not really friends to begin with, even in a shul itself, people will squabble and argue about petty little things, and then they have to split up. They have a breakaway. They have fights in the shul. So he says, don't have too many re'im, which is acquaintances or friends that are not really friends. You should try to focus on people where there's genuine love. Okay, because if you love somebody, even if they do something you don't like or they have a habit that bothers you, they think a little bit different than you on something, then it's not going to create a rift in the friendship because it's something deeper than that. Let's see what the Malbim writes over here. He says, Ishraim, a man of friends, a sociable fellow. Kvar Amru Amechakrim, the investigators have already said, the scientists, I guess the social scientists who study these things have said, Ki akone ovim rabim afilu echad ein lo. This is a powerful line. One who acquires many lovers, many people who love him, he doesn't even have one. You think you have 10 girlfriends? You don't even have one girlfriend. You think you have like 10 best friends forever, as the teenage girls say. You don't even have one. You can't spread the love so thin, okay? Because the more you spread the love, the thinner it gets, okay? Love is something that's depth. It takes depth. It's deep, and it takes an investment of time and energy, and you can't have that with everybody. There just isn't enough time for it. So people who think that you have lots and lots of friends, especially people who love you, you really don't have anybody. When push comes to shove, you'll find you don't have anybody, God forbid, who loves you. Because love is something very special. It's singular. It's not something that you can have in the plural and on a wholesale level. But love and if the more love you have, the more you try to spread out the love, the more it becomes canceled and split up. You can't spread the love too thin because then you're left with nothing. Okay? That's what the pasuk in Mishlei is saying, says the Malbim. One who says that he has many friends, who rock hisro eya. It's just to show that he's a sociable guy. Look at me, I got 5,000 friends on Facebook. I'm really popular. That's all it is. Once somebody who tries to get a lot of friends, it's just for the sake of saying that he has a lot of friends. That's all. That he should appear as if he is a friendly person, a sociable guy, very popular with lots of friends. He said, "Get there, binyan is spoil." All I'm doing. This is like a fence for a building that is just imaginary. Like all your friends on social media are fake friends. They're not real friends. Uba ms ain lo rayim, and in reality, he doesn't have any friends at all. The yesh ohev, there is one who loves a person, says the pasuk. Im yesha ohev echad, if he has one person who truly loves him, who davek me'ach, then he is more attached to him than a brother, because your brother hopefully loves you. Your brother will hopefully be there for you, even if he doesn't feel so close to you, just because he's your brother. But somebody who truly loves the essence of you as a human being is even closer to you. That is the construct of love. That is greater than all the various types of love, even the love between two brothers. This is why do brothers love each other? Because of an accident of birth, shall we call it. They happen to have been born into the same family, so they hopefully have a commitment to each other that they love each other, and hopefully it's genuine as well. They find things that they really love about each other, but not necessarily, as we see. Okay, but a true love between two people that's based on something real, that can even transcend the love between two brothers. Okay, let's see the Archos Tzadikim on friendship. This is a classic Musar Sefer, and he has a gate, Shar Ha'ava, the gate of love. So he talks about what love is, various types of love. We'll just read one small section from this on friendship. He says, we'll just skip around. I'll skip the middle of it. He says, a person has to be very careful not to associate with the company of people that are not worthy, that are not good people, in order that he should not learn from their actions. And to distance himself from a company of scoffers, from lightheaded people that are always joking around, making fun of things, not serious people. Okay, and then he says that a wise person said to his son, just goes very long over here, and I want to save time because there's a lot to share. He says that a wise person advises his son to associate only with sages, with wise people, because then their wisdom will rub off on him as well. And then he says, and you will also learn from their actions. He says, when you're choosing a friend, who should you choose? Choose to attach yourself to somebody where you can learn from him things that will bring you closer to serving Hashem. That should be the criteria for choosing a friend. Will this person's company assist me in serving Hashem? Will it make me a better person? Will he teach me how to serve Hashem better? Will he strengthen me? Then I want to be his friend. If not, he's just a pleasant fellow and we can joke around and have conversations. There's no great value in that. The Amru Chachamim and the sages said, here's an interesting litmus test that the sages give us. If you want to be a friend with somebody, okay, you are considering becoming a friend with somebody, hachi seyu, get him angry. Now, you're not allowed normally to get people angry, but I guess this is a very limited exception. Put him to the test. I say if you're dating somebody, right? You're dating somebody, you're checking a person out for marriage, right? You should see how they are when they're having a bad day, when they're upset, or maybe even purposely, not out of malice, but again, do something that will anger them or annoy them, not fly them into a rage, but something that gets their temper up to see how they react when they're angry. Okay? And here's what he says. If he will admit the truth to you, even when he's angry, meaning even though he's upset, he's still reasonable. He's still able to think reasonably, rationally, and calmly, even though he's angry, but he is in charge of his anger. His anger is not in charge of him. He's in charge of his emotions. His emotions are not in charge of him. His chaber lo. That person you should be friends with. Somebody who can control himself, even when he's upset or when you do something that angers him, that's a friend. And if not, if he flies off the handle and says things that nobody should ever say and does things that nobody should ever do, even if they're upset about something, azov also, leave him, abandon him. Don't be friends with somebody like that. Rather, choose to be a friend with somebody who knows his own worth. He knows his place. He doesn't think he's greater than he is, doesn't think he's a nothing. Somebody who knows where he stands in the world, who's humble and reasonable and knows where he fits in. Somebody who doesn't recognize himself, who doesn't know his place, it is not good to be in his company. Okay, he goes on. Another criteria for choosing a friend: acquire for yourself a friend who will reprove you, who will give you criticism, constructive criticism when you do something improper. That's what you want. You want a friend who's going to tell you when you're doing the wrong thing. How many people in our lives, if we tell them they may be doing the wrong thing by taking certain shots or going into a death trap or some such thing, they get angry at you, right? They don't even want to hear what you say. And they won't tell you if you're doing the wrong thing. They'll everybody sort of, if you're in a social group, the unspoken agreement when you're in any social group is that you wink, wink, you just, make everybody feel good. Don't say anything that could rock the boat, right? Everybody just sort of get along with everybody else. But your friend, Dafka, the purpose of a real friend is to tell you when you're doing something wrong. Again, he's not doing it out of ego. He's not doing it because he wants you to feel bad. He's not doing it because he's looking to find fault with people. He's not a critical person, but because he's your friend. He cares about you, and that's what friends do. He cares about your physical and spiritual health, and therefore he'll tell you when you're doing something improper. And he will teach you to do the good thing. And he will assist you with his nefesh, with his own self, and with his money. And that is a trustworthy, loyal friend, somebody who will be there for you, who will help you, and criticize you if necessary. But a friend who simply flatters you, tells you what you want to hear, right? If you're having an argument with somebody and your friend always takes your side, even if you're absolutely wrong, because a friend is supposed to stick up for a friend. Well, not necessarily. If you're wrong, he should tell you that you're wrong, right? A friend who just tells you that you're always right and what you want to hear, and when you do something wrong, he rationalizes for you and justifies it. And he consoles you when you do the wrong thing. He says, no, it's not so bad. It's fine. You're a great guy. Don't worry about it. Instead of giving you musar, histalek me olav, get rid of him. Stay away from him. Okay. Then he goes on and says that a friend who, of course, will take things from you. He's just a leech. Of course, you don't want to be friends with that. He goes on and says a friend who is justifies evil. We see this today with the recent elections where people are rationalizing for their false messiah. No matter what he said or did, they rationalize. No, if he did something bad, he did something bad. If somebody committed medical genocide, they committed medical genocide. They didn't know. They didn't mean it. They didn't force you. Come on. If he did something wrong, he did something wrong. You have to live up to it. You have to own up to it. Then he says also that it is forbidden to join with a Russia. It is forbidden to partner with a wicked person in worldly matters. Here we're not talking about a friend, we're talking about a business partner or any other such partnership. You're not allowed to be partners with a wicked person. Shnemar, as it says, this is from Divrei Hayamim Beis, that when you join together with Achazyahu, who was a wicked king, this was talking about Yehoshaphat, I believe he was the righteous king from the house of David, and he joined together with Achazyahu, the wicked king from the 10 tribes. So they partnered with each other. They became in-laws. They married off their children to each other. So it was a real partnership. So Hashem made a breach in your actions. Okay, meaning that it was a bad thing for you to do, and you were punished for it. That you had a downfall because of that. He says, "Vafilu." Here's a key line. Vafilu lidvar mitzvah. Even for the performance of a mitzvah, you might say, "Okay, I can do the mitzvah better if this Russia joins me. Maybe he'll finance the mitzvah." Russia. You're not allowed to join together with a Russia. I spoke about this last time, okay, where people rationalize taking money for the Christians for the sake of building up Israel or for their Torah institutions or whatever from impure sources. It is forbidden, even for the sake of a mitzvah, to become partners with a wicked person. Shinamar, as it says in Mishli, Paragimel, al tekane bishchamas, do not be jealous of a thief, a crook. The al tivchar b'chol dracham, do not choose his ways. If you are partnering with him, you're sort of justifying his ways. You are acknowledging that there's some benefit to his wickedness. Okay, and the Chachamim said, he says, in Avos Rabbi Nassan, says, do not partner with a Rasha even for the sake of a mitzvah. And he concludes in this section, he says, there are many ways of death that are found in those who partner or collaborate with the wicked people. Stay away from them. If Hashem wants you to do the mitzvah, he'll find a way for you to do the mitzvah without partnering with the Rasha. You should realize that the opportunity to partner with the Rasha is simply a test from Hashem and from the Yetzer Hara to see if you can cut corners and rationalize. Hashem doesn't want you to rationalize. If you can't do the mitzvah the right way with the right people, then fine. It's Hashem's will that the mitzvah will not be done at this time, and you just have to accept that. Okay, next pasuk we're going to do comes from Divrei Hayamim, This is Divrei Yamim Aleph, Perek Chaf Zayin, chapter 27, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, which is 33. This is listing David HaMelech's officers, his generals, and his officers. Seems to be just a very boring section, just a bunch of names of people and what they were doing, but there's lessons to be learned everywhere. Pasuk says, V'Achitofel Yoes LaMelech. Achitofel was the king's counselor. He gave him advice. We learned about Achitofel a while ago. He rebelled against David in the rebellion with Avshalom, and David wrote some of the Mizmorim of Tehillim about Achitofel's betrayal. He was a very, very brilliant man, a great Torah scholar, and unfortunately, he became a Rasha. He became David's rival, and it led to Achitophel's own downfall. In the end, he actually killed himself. He took his own life when he saw that Avshalom had not followed his advice, and the rebellion was therefore going to fail. So he took his own life. But he was the counselor of the king. The Hushai Ha'arki was one of David's loyal friends who actually assisted him during the rebellion. Very interesting story, but we're not going to get into it. The Hushai Ha'arki, Reya HaMelech. So Hushai Ha'arki was the friend of the king. Now, I'm sure David had many friends, many people who liked him. He certainly had enemies. I'm sure he had even more friends. So what is this government position, right? We're talking about the government officers, right? The king's officials, and we mentioned Hushai Ha'arki was a friend of the king. What is that? So Metzudas David said that this was actually a job. It was his job to be the king's friend. He would sit always, constantly with the king. Hushai Ha'arki was like the right-hand man of David HaMelech. Imo, to enjoy his company, to delight in having him around. He enjoyed having him around. In other words, he was his friend to confide in. Everybody has friends, but you can't tell your personal secrets to everybody. If something is troubling you, something deeply personal, you can't bare your soul to everybody. So this was the job of Hushai Ha'arki, to be David's friend. They would go for private walks together, and David could talk to him about anything that was on his mind that he couldn't tell anybody else. Even his other friends, the rabbis of the time, his wives, couldn't tell anybody. But Hushai, that was his job, to be a confidant of David HaMelech, his friend, and even just to enjoy his company, just somebody that you know, this is somebody who's always going to be pleasant to be with. He's a good friend, and I can talk to him about anything. So we see here that one of the main features of friendship that everybody needs, and again, you're lucky if you have even one such person in your life. You can't have too many such people in your life. As you learned from the Malbim and from the other pasuk in Mishlei, you can't have too many such people in your life because it's simply not physically possible to have that deep a relationship with that many people. But you're lucky if you have even one. And David had a man, Hushai Ha'arki, that was his job, to be his friend. And I just want to give you a side point. When people get married, so that one of the brachos, in the Sheva brachos, is that the husband and wife should have Ava, Achva, Shalom, and Reyes. 4 different words that illustrate the loving, friendly, and loving relationship that we are blessing this new couple to have. They should have 4 adjectives associated with their relationship. Ava, Achva, Shalom. So what's the difference? There's no extra words in the Hebrew language. So there's a nuance between them. So first we have Ava, which is love. Achva is brotherhood. Shalom is peace. And Reyes is friendship, as we just saw. What's the difference between them? These are different facets of a friendly relationship, and in this case, a marital relationship. So Ava is love. What does love mean? Well, that's a whole long shiur in itself, but love in essence means that you're doing more for the person than the law requires of you. Husbands and wives have legal obligations to each other. The signing a ksuba, the Torah outlines the responsibilities, the minimal responsibilities between a husband and a wife. I wrote a sefer about this, Tovim Hashanayim, talking about the role and nature of men and women, and also talking about marriage, the different roles and natures, and also responsibilities that a husband and wife have. But that's the minimum, right? Because when all else fails, right, they still have to fulfill their contractual obligations. But we're hoping that they will relate to each other on a much higher level. They're not going to try to get away with the bare minimum, but they'll relate to each other with love. I'm going to just do more and more and more for you, not even keeping track of how much I do for you and how much you do for me. I just love you, so I'm going to give you everything that I can. That's love, okay? Achva is brotherhood. So we saw from Mishlei a concept of brother. Well, what's a brother? A brother is a blood relative. So that's something that's permanent, right? You come from your parents, you share a lineage, right? You share some very basic and important things in common. And that should be rock solid, meaning brothers might not like each other so much. Unfortunately, not all brothers love each other, but there's a commitment that you're from the same family. And therefore, even if you don't like to spend time with each other, and you're not even on very much speaking terms, when push comes to shove, you'll be there for your brother. That's what family is. In a time of need, brothers should always be there. Again, we're hoping it will be more than that. Brothers should love each other, do more. But this is a special feature of brotherhood, that you share some very, very basic things in common. It's rock solid, and you're never going to give up on that. So that's also a feature of marriage, or at least it should be. Then you have shalom, which is peace. So very simply, right? A feature of this relationship is that you're going to view peace as a paramount goal of the relationship. Sometimes you'll give up on things for the sake of peace. Okay. Sometimes you won't do things for the sake of peace. You'll overlook things, right? It's a goal that you're striving for, that you're always going to have peace in the relationship, not to have strife and arguments. And finally, reus, which is friendship. So we see from this pasuk in Divrei Hayam about Chushei Arki, that is a confidant, right? A husband and wife can love each other. They can be similar to brothers and have a blood, rock solid bond. They can live in peace and harmony, but they might not necessarily be able to confide in each other. There might be a certain window of the soul that they can't share with the spouse. Okay, so we bless them that they should have reus as well, that it should be a confidant. Now, there's certain things that husbands and wives, in fact, shouldn't even tell each other. Like, for example, Chazal tell us if the husband is in the base medrash and somebody says something nasty to him, he shouldn't go home and tell his wife that this guy was really mean to me in shul today. Because then the wife is going to make an argument with the other guy's wife and make a machloek, but she doesn't need to know everything. You don't have to tell your wife every little thing that goes on in your life. That's not what a confidant is. Okay, but a wife should be somebody that you can confide in, that you can counsel and take counsel in for things that are going on. Okay, and these are 4 different aspects, and we bless the husband and wife to have ava, achva, shalom, and reus. Let's see one more source on friendship. This comes from the Pele Yoetz in his essay on chavrusa, which is normally taken to mean somebody that you learn Torah with, not necessarily a friend that you go out for coffee with, but somebody that you're learning Torah with. But of course, that is the ultimate friend, right? Somebody that you're growing spiritually with together and teaching, learning and teaching Torah to each other. So he starts off by saying, we're not going to read the whole thing. He talks about how it's very important, especially when people are judging a case together or trying to answer a question in Torah, that they should have a colleague, a friend that they can bounce their ideas off with each other. And they shouldn't make stupid arguments. They shouldn't play devil's advocate with each other, as sometimes people do because they don't want to give in. Even when the truth is apparent, they should be moda al emes. It's something else I wanted to talk about as well, maybe in a future class, but they should admit to the truth. Even if they're great scholars and they can come up with very clever arguments to try to stand by their position, they shouldn't do that. If they know that they're wrong, they know the other guy has a point, then they should give in. Okay, they should be moda al emes. Okay, and then he goes on and says, when it comes to giving rulings, again, he says a person should always have other judges working with him. At the very least, they should share the responsibility if they get it wrong. This is based on a Gemara in Sanhedrin, that when Rava would want to paskin a shaila for the butchers, it's a chicken, kosher, or treif, he would get other people with him to judge with him as well, just so they should all share the responsibility. Okay, but then he says if you can't find any such people, he says as follows: if he's in a place where there are no people like that, colleagues that you can learn Torah with, give rulings with, answer your questions for each other, you should be a friend for yourself. Sometimes you can't find people that you can be close with in this way, and you've got to be able to be comfortable in your own company. If there's a lockdown, if you're going through something in the world today where the government is making people turn against each other, sometimes you might have to just say, I don't have any friends right now. I got to truck along all by myself. The hainu that is, so how do you learn Torah alone if you don't have somebody to bounce ideas off? And this is not really just for Torah, but for anything. Let's say you are forming an opinion about something, and you don't have any trusted people that you can share your opinions with to see if your conclusions are valid or not. So what should you do? You should dig many tunnels. It's a figure of speech. And make different sides and angles. So try to counteract your own reasoning and opinion. You have an opinion about something, you see something in the media which you shouldn't be reading, but the Yetzer Hara gets you, and you look at the media, and now you're starting to form an opinion about something that's going on in the world. And you don't have anybody to talk to about that you can really trust because everybody's brainwashed. If you say the wrong thing, they'll start calling you names. Okay? So you're all by yourself. So what do? So now you have an opinion in your mind. Pretend that you're the other guy. You're taking the other side, and now try to counteract your own opinion. Challenge yourself. Okay? Attack your own opinion in many different ways. Okay, and you should try with all of your might to find a blemish, to find a treifa in yourself, in your own opinions, in your own beliefs, to challenge your own beliefs and try to find something wrong with them. Try to find yourself wrong and guilty in your own assumption. And through this, when you really try with all your effort to prove yourself wrong and you can't do it, but you're sincerely trying to see if there's a flaw in your reasoning, then your righteousness will shine forth with light. Then you will judge properly. Meaning you don't just judge at first glance. Well, I'm trusting my gut feeling. right? I already thought about it. No, you got to take the other side. So to speak, play devil's advocate with yourself, but on a very high level, really try to see, is there a flaw in your reasoning? I posted about this recently. We have to understand, we have to think about how we think. How do we form our opinions? Why do we believe the things that we believe? Why do we draw the conclusions that we've drawn? Why are we so resistant to changing our mind about anything? We have to be our own devil's advocate, and only then will we have rock solid conclusions that we really earn the right to have. You have to earn the right to have an opinion. People have a lot of opinions, but most of them don't have the right to have an opinion because they never really thought about it. They never examined the other side properly, and they never really thought about it. So they don't have the right to have an opinion. That's the truth. Okay? He says it's the same thing in Torah. When you're learning Torah and you think that something is right, well, you have to look at it from different angles. You have to look at it from different angles. Okay? Now he goes on to friendship, and he says that friends, here it's very important what he says in the bottom of the page here. It says, love and friendship is only with people that are similar in some ways. You have to share some certain core values, character traits. You have to be similar. It's not true that opposites attract. You need somebody who's very similar. It doesn't mean exactly like you. Your friend shouldn't be like you because otherwise he would never argue with you. He'd never tell you when you're doing the wrong thing. But you have to be similar in the things that matter. Shavim b'midos u'b'deos, that your mind or your opinions rather and your traits have to be similar or equal even. Then you can dwell together as brothers, and you will not split up. Again, it doesn't mean that you never argue with anybody. It's Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai argued all the time, but their students still married into each other's families. They loved each other very much. Right? Chazal, our greatest sages, they would argue with vehemence about many different things, but at the end of the day, they were the best of friends. So it doesn't mean you never argue, but why were they able to be best of friends? Because their core values were all aligned. They were all on the same page. They all were trying to serve Hashem and learn Torah correctly. They were all committed to the Torah and to Hashem. That was the basis of their friendship. Now, if their understanding of how to serve Hashem differed slightly based on their understanding of Torah sources, that's fine. That's why we learn, and that's why we learn with other people. And he says, but finding somebody who's very similar to you in your opinions and your traits and your core values is very hard to find. If you do find such a person, says the Pele Yoetz, Yochazenu below Yarpenu, hold on to that person and don't let him go. If you're fortunate enough to have a very good friend, invest in that friendship, invest in that person, even if your life circumstances change, you're distant from each other. Don't give up that person because it's very, very very, very precious. True friends are not interchangeable parts. You lose a Facebook friend, you'll get another Facebook friend. Somebody gets angry that I said something about Trump or the IDF or whatever, and they say, take me off your email list. Fine, I didn't celebrate when you joined my email list. I'm not going to mourn when you leave it. I didn't know who you are 2 months ago. It makes no difference to me. Somebody else will join the list. It makes no difference. These are people that are expendable. But somebody who's really a true friend, you have to invest in that and hold on to the person. Very, very important. Okay, I think that he mentions the pasuk in Mishli as well. And he says that we'll just read the end of what he says over here. He says, one second. He said also that you shouldn't join with a bad friend, with a bad person, because you're very likely to learn from his ways. This is a very important principle to always keep in mind. Choose your friends carefully. We'll just read the very end of what the Pele Yoetz says on the essay. It says, "V'al kol panim." Nevertheless, in any case, im ein lo chaver tov, if a person doesn't have a good friend, because again, it's not something that you can necessarily manufacture on your own. It's something that God blesses you with. It does require effort and a personal investment in it, but you're not necessarily going to find somebody that is capable of being a good friend. So what if you're stuck? Yimalech b'debisu. Then a person should consult with his wife. Interesting, the wife is not the first choice in all matters. It's saying if you can't find a good friend to confide in and learn Torah with, and you have a question, you may have to turn to your wife. I guess for household matters, the wife would be the first choice, but for other matters, not necessarily. Okay, what if a person doesn't have a wife either? Well, then he's got to be his own friend. He's got to turn to Hashem and be a friend to himself. But anyway, says he should consult with his wife. As we find with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, when they wanted to appoint him the Nasi, the head of the academy, basically the Gadol Hadar, so he consulted with his wife. It's a big undertaking, a big responsibility, and he consulted with his wife first. The Amar Rabbeinu, our rabbis of blessed memory, said as well, Itzach Gutza, Gechan Ulachashla, famous Gemara in Bava Metzia, if your wife is short, bend down and listen to her. Okay, again, doesn't mean you always listen to your wife. Lowell said in the preamble to the show off the air that wife is always right. Not true. No one's always right. Only God is always right. Okay, but when it comes to, again, household matters, or sometimes in assessing the character of people, women are particularly good at that. Although when dating, not so much. They tend to go for jerks. But in general, if you have a guest in the house and the wife feels a little funny about somebody, even though she can't put her finger on it, then you should trust that. It means something. Okay. So in certain matters, anyway, if your wife is short, then you should lean down and listen to what she has to say. It doesn't mean you blindly follow what she says. You don't blindly follow what anybody says, but you should listen to what she says. And it says in she is your friend, right? A wife, among other job descriptions, is your friend, your chaver, your chavera, somebody who is joined to you, and the wife of your covenant. You're making a covenant with your wife. You are now sharing a journey in life together, and therefore you should be able to consult with each other and talk openly and give each other good advice. Okay, that's the end of the class today. Let me see. I see a comment from David. Yeah, I just see a comment. I don't see any questions, so I'll read the comment to myself and give it back to Lo.
Oh, yes. So we want to thank Rabbi Weissman for another illuminating talk, and we will reconvene next week on Wednesday, November 20th for episode 134. Just a little footnote. The customer is always right. The wife is always right. That's not referring to moral issues or issues of life and death. I mean daily household issues. Honey, throw out the garbage. Yes. Let's decorate it this way. Okay. But if his son says, honey, would you jump out the window of a 10th-story building? Yes, honey. No, you don't do that. Or please, would you drown the children? No, we can't do that. So I'm talking about common sense daily situations. And one of my books said, remember, you can be the president and the CEO of the corporation home. You're private. Do what your wife tells you with matters of simple daily things around the house. But if it's a matter of principle, then you have to know we really don't want to do that. Can't do that. Well, let's
Actually,
poison
by the way, contrary to modern Western thinking or non-thinking as it is, the man, especially if he's a Torah scholar, should be setting the spiritual tone in the house. That's his job. When it comes to, the man is supposed to be the leader of the household in terms of spiritual Torah matters, not the wife. The wife, in terms of the managerial aspects of the home, that's her domain. But in terms of, this is the way things are done because this is what the Torah says, it's the man's job to do that. And the wife is supposed to look up to the husband. Again, that's why women prefer to marry taller men, because even the feminists tend to be attracted to taller men. Why is that? Because they naturally, something inside that they want to stamp out of themselves, but they can't because God put it there. A woman wants to look up to a man. A woman wants a man, to be the moral leader of the household, the physical protector of the household, and she should be able to look up to him, and she has a mitzvah to look up to him as well. And he should be worthy of being looked up to, of course, but nevertheless, the wife is supposed to look up to the husband, not just be a tyrant who runs everything as the Western world would have us believe.
So I knew a rabbi, he got his smicha and his doctorate from Yeshiva University many years ago. He's long since gone home to God, who said, my wife, I'm banished from the kitchen. I'm not allowed in because she says I always mix up her kashrut. So I don't go in anymore. I just route the garbage and do things. So common sense here. What did I want to say about what? Oh, yes, Jackson Brown, who's a wonderful singer, and his music is actually very religious themes. He's not Jewish. He's not, I don't know if he's a Christian in any way. He's born non-Jewish. He's in the 70s, 80s. And he came to perform years ago on Masada. He just relating to the point you're bringing up. In one of his songs, he says, maybe people ask you how you're doing because it's easier than saying how little they could care. So, Mashlamcha, how are you? This is relating to what Rabbi, it's also in terms of it's called in philosophy, the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Like Hanania said, so 5,000 followers or friends on Facebook or some social media, it doesn't really mean anything. But there are many people who actually believe it's not real. It's not a real, is acquaintances as subscribers to you. It's not the same thing. So it's very important what I think what you were talking about. And we would, in our family, we never understand certain people. They have to put up every 10 minutes on Facebook photos of their family, what they did, what they ate, where they went. Why is that necessary? maybe because they're just so lonely and don't have any real friends to talk to. So you have this ersatz, make-believe, fake friends. Okay, that's it. And I just want to thank, without naming anyone, some people don't mind being named. Some people like to be named. Some people don't want to be named. I can't keep records of it. Our participants from England and France and Japan and the United States and Israel. Thank you for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you next week.